Oh, hi there. I was just playing a little bit of Grand Theft Auto on my Darth Vader PSP and sort of thinking about the idea of games and their future. You see, I think that as an art form, video games just keep getting better. We keep seeing bigger games, more experimental indie projects, and stuff that just manages to improve on the idea and concept of fun at the forefront. But there is a giant thing that I'm nervous about, the idea of the all-digital future. The fact that very soon, none of us may actually own our video games. You won't get a disc, you won't have anything to hold in your hand, and you won't even have anything to set on the shelf of your collection, and there is some pretty downsides to this. Some big downsides that need to be addressed. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and the reason that I really wanted to dig into this today is the fact that we're starting to see digital games that already exist starting to be removed from marketplaces. Games that right now are purchasable and playable, but very soon will disappear for all of eternity. Over the course of the last couple of days, this has become a really hot button topic, something that's being very much ripped into because of the idea of Driveclub. So this was a game that was actually being produced by Sony, but it had some really interesting twists to it. So it was basically a racing game that tried to center itself on the idea of ultra hardcore simulation. It wanted to be the most realistic laps around the track, and personally, the biggest goal it seemed like was to try and get people invested in it. Now, I use the word invested because you actually spent real money in Driveclub to get a lot of the vehicles and stuff. And so because of this, people are a little bit upset right now that Driveclub is about to be taken offline forever. And right now, Driveclub is a digital experience. That means when Sony flips the switch, it will actually delete itself for all of eternity. Now, this is disturbing, especially imagine if you spent hundreds of dollars in this game or thousands of hours, and now, poof, with the press of a button, it's gone forever. Now, this is actually something that seems to be happening more and more often. A lot of times indie games now are sort of having this big issue where they end up creating a game, they put it up, it's only digital, and then eventually when they run out of cash, if it ends up not being successful enough, it gets deleted off the servers. And when this happens, the game literally ceases to be. That means everybody who tried to play it or got into it is now just basically screwed. I mean, as somebody who gets a ton of different digital games, this is becoming a very big problem. There are games in my download list on my PlayStation 4 that are gone forever. And funny enough, this has been happening more and more frequently over the course of the last couple of years. Think about something like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. This is arguably one of the best beat-em-ups of all time, and what's interesting is that it's sort of like a licensed indie project. A very small team came together to make a game based on the movie, of course, but it had tons of different levels, lots of fantastic music, and some really cool styles of action. But now it's just disappeared and nobody knows why. It is completely just vanished. It's not on any current hardware and it's just irreversibly vanished. And you can't help but be a little bit upset when you realize that this is art that has now just been deleted, even if you happen to pay for it. Think about something like PT Demo. PT Demo was perhaps one of the scariest games ever, and now it's just gone. Now, that was obviously just a tiny playable teaser, but Konami had the ability to at any time just completely make it just disappear into the ether, so they did. This stuff annoys me. This stuff disturbs me because this stuff very much worries me. We live in a time now where as we progress into the digital future, everything is going to be based on the whims of publishers. What they like will exist. What begins to annoy them will just be taken down. What's really the most worrying aspect of this is that it's not just multiplayer experiences. It's not just stuff that's reliant on servers. It's basically, if they want to try and take something down off the Sony marketplace or the Xbox marketplace or Steam, if they want, it's just gone. In fact, this actually happened recently. Somebody decided to make a very cool horror game, and unfortunately, it got some pretty big backlash from China, and they decided to take it down off Steam, and now it's just gone. You can't find find it. A few people managed to bootleg copies of it, and that's sort of one way you can play it, but this incredibly good and incredibly fresh tasting on the horror genre just vanished because it was digital only. This stuff disturbs me because as we go more into the digital only future, this will happen on a daily basis. There are thousands of games a year that are released at this point. All sorts of stuff from Assassin's Creed to tiny indie games to really experimental projects, but all the time these companies are running out of cash. When that happens, typically they just have to go bankrupt, or sometimes just go into basically they have to downscale. And when this happens, typically the extra sales of their game keeps them floating long enough to try and build themselves back up. In the digital only future, when these people run out of money, their games will also just disappear forever. They won't be able to pay Sony, they won't be able to play Google Stadia, and so because of it, their projects will disappear. And I just can't get over that because honestly, I hate the idea of games just going into the wind. I think that what we need to do is start realizing that physical games for now are something that we absolutely need to support. Now, I don't live in La La Land. I do realize that eventually everything will be digital. Everything will hit that point in time. But I think what is absolutely vital as of now is to boycott digital-only games. The big issue right now is the fact that these companies are purposely trying to gamble. They're trying to experiment and see what will work, what will make them the most money, and what people will put up with. Because eventually, they want to try and shift over to that mode permanently. And when that happens, basically whatever they think will pass, will pass. I mean, just look at some of the stuff they're trying to freaking tinker with right now. Like, very, very soon we're about to get that new cool game, Control. And Control does look super, super fun. But if you look at it, they're trying to provide all sorts of special digital-only perks. Things that basically try and emphasize you buying it digitally on the PS4 over every other platform. As a way to try and push you into not really actually getting the game so much as it is you playing the game. This stuff makes them way more profit and actually makes it where later on, if they get mad at the game, they can literally just erase it. They will literally be in full control of Control. That is something that is just getting so dangerously close to crazy town. Now, I think that all sorts of games are sort of tinkering with this in different ways, but I'm not really talking about multiplayer-only experiences. Like, this is obviously Final Fantasy XIV. This is what it was like back at launch. At this point, this disc doesn't do anything. This is basically a digital-only game, but it's so reliant on servers and having other players, I sort of understand the idea, the fact that you'll never really own this so much as it is you paying for access to it. My real problem is with games that are single-player or heavily centered on single-player completely vanishing just because a publisher chooses it to be so, or for a console actually just being discontinued. So obviously at the start of this video I was talking about the PSP. Well, you may not know this, but the PSP actually had some very early digital-only games. Now, as somebody who was a huge fan of this, I actually bought it at launch and ended up getting some of these little games. There were things like, there was like strategy games like Field Runners, or there was a really interesting one called Corpse Party that was basically a point-and-click adventure that had lots of scares in it. And all of those now have completely just vanished. And I'm upset simply because it seems like we're actually getting into a dangerous phase where things are not forever. Everything now is actually going to have an express timeline on it. Basically, an expiration date between when you buy it and when it eventually will cease to exist. Right now on PlayStation 4, I actually own over 500 games. Most of those digitally, and about 25 of those are games that now are studios that have run out of cash and trying to click on the game does absolutely nothing. Some of them I can't even install anymore. The digital-only future is basically a promise that I don't think they can keep. What I think really needs to happen now, though, to try and send a message to them is to boycott digital-only games, to try and basically say, hey, we're not yet comfortable with this because you guys aren't ready for this. The only way to try and tell people, hey, we're all right with the idea of the digital-only future, just not yet. technology is not there. We do not get a chance to actually download these games on a thumb drive and play them forever. They're things that exist on our consoles in some theoretical ways, but they're not really here yet, and personally, I'm just not ready for it. This is a time period where we need to realize that if we want to try and make the most of our experiences, we need to speak very clearly with our dollars. We need to support the art we love, buy games that look awesome and buy games that get good review scores, but also simultaneously tell them that, hey, I don't want to live on your server. Well, this has just been my thoughts on a rather icky topic, but what do you think of it? Are you okay with the idea of the digital-only future, or are you as nervous as I am about it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. I had to actually blow my nose about 10 times while recording this video, so I apologize if my nose got redder throughout this. I tried. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.